So perfect. My name is Tammy Johnson, and I'm the owner of Liquid Catering. We are the Upstate's only special event bartending company. So I'm just going to talk to you just a little bit today about how to make your wedding really, really exciting by, of course, implementing hopefully maybe a little bit of alcohol. Alcohol services at your wedding are something that, of course, a lot of brides may be a little bit leery of, especially a lot of moms are probably like, you know, we don't want Uncle Tommy to get too crazy and, you know, make a bad toast or anything like that. But I'm going to talk to you first of all about just the different types of various alcohol options you have, and then also how to serve alcohol safely so you don't have any awkward toast. Having alcohol at your wedding can be really important because your wedding is a party. It's your biggest party that you may ever throw, and let's face it, alcohol is just going to help your guests get a little bit more comfortable, have a better experience, and you pair that with a great DJ, great lighting, and some other fun aspects, and you're going to have a fabulous party. So, a couple of questions that I always get asked are, what are the different types of alcohol options out there? And a lot of that depends on your venue. So first of all, we have what I like to call flat rate packages, and this is something that Liquid Catering offers. Basically, you would pay a flat rate per person, no matter how much alcohol is consumed. So at Liquid Catering, our packages start out at $9 a guest for 3 hours for beer and wine. And of course, depending on your alcohol and how many hours you have, those rates vary. Flat rate's a great option because that's going to include all your bartenders, your alcohol, your equipment, your portable bar, everything. You don't have to worry about paying for anything else or having anything there. The other option is you'll have a lot of hotels and venues that offer alcohol exclusively. They'll offer you consumption bars. And those can get a little bit tricky, but basically what happens is your guests have an open bar at the venue. They go to the bar, they get whatever drink they choose, and then your venue would charge you appropriately for how many drinks are poured. This is a great option, especially if you're thinking about that a lot of your guests may not drink. However, more often than not, you're going to end up with a sticker shock at the end of the night. You may have a $1,000 alcohol budget, and then all of a sudden you get the bill and it's $3,000 because that hotel has been charging you $6 for every single drink that's been poured. So if you do have a consumption bar at your venue, please make sure the bartenders know when to cut it off. You know, if you get to where you're at $2,000 or something of the sort, make sure they know to stop it and switch everything over to a cash bar. The third option, of course, are cash bars. And this is a great option for couples that maybe you particularly don't drink alcohol. Maybe your family doesn't really drink alcohol, but you want to have something to offer your guests just at their choice, so you can do a cash bar. And cash bars are basically your guests would just come in and pay whatever they would like for a beer or wine, and they can drink as much as they want. The liability is completely off of you, so that's great. Keep in mind, if you want to do a cash bar, you have to have a licensed bartending company that does it. Cash bars in South Carolina do require special event permits. So you cannot do a cash bar yourself. You can't hire somebody to come in and sell alcohol that you buy at the store. You have to have a bartending company that actually goes and gets the permits. The other catch with cash bars is if the venue itself is not licensed, you can't do liquor cash bars in South Carolina. You can only do beer and wine. So that's something, if you're interested in a cash bar at all, come talk to me. It can get really, really crazy with all the different laws out there. Then the fourth option, and probably the most popular, what I hear a lot of brides asking, is can we provide our own alcohol and just hire you to serve it? Yes, that absolutely is an option. You can hire Liquid Catering to come in and be a bartender, or your venue may offer bartending service and let you bring in your own alcohol. However, that's a great option if you're on a budget, and I totally understand that. But to be completely fair and truthful, it's not always the most economical option, and there are several reasons for that. First of all, you end up having to go purchase all the alcohol yourself. You know, you may go to Tony's liquor store and get all the beer and the wine and the liquor and so forth, and just bring it and your bartender would serve it. But along with you providing all the alcohol, you're also going to have to provide all the equipment, the ice, the mixers, the sodas, the coolers, the portable bar, everything. That ends up being a lot of stuff that, first of all, somebody's got to get it there. And then after the wedding, somebody's got to take all that equipment home and clean it. And let's face it, you're off on your honeymoon. Do you really want your mom, having to clean alcohol mess and stickiness and stuff after the wedding? Probably not. And I can also guarantee you too, as soon as all your groomsmen see all that beer sitting there, do you think they're going to let you take those leftovers home? Oh, no, no, no. Those leftovers are going to be going home with the groomsmen. So, just something to keep in mind. The other problem with doing alcohol yourself, and this is the biggest thing that I just kind of want to reiterate, and I'm going to just keep talking about that, is insurance liability. And this just goes back to alcohol safety as a whole. In the state of South Carolina, you as a social host can be held legally liable if someone gets into an accident driving home from your wedding. That's a very, very, very scary thought. So if you are providing the alcohol, and if a minor somehow gets a hold of that alcohol, drinks it, and God forbid if they were to cause an accident on the way home, the victim's family could actually sue you for millions and millions of dollars. So, first of all, never, ever, ever let minors drink at your wedding, ever. That's a big reason why you need to have a licensed company serving your alcohol so they can keep minors from drinking. But secondly, when it comes to insurance, if you're providing the alcohol yourself, you have no insurance coverage. So you need to get your own special event alcohol insurance, or go with the venue's full service package to where they're providing the alcohol and the insurance, and then you're covered. So when you're shopping around your venues and when you're talking to your catering companies, make sure they carry liquor liability insurance. And I'm going to say that again. You need to make sure your caterer or your venue hall or whomever is providing your alcohol has liquor liability insurance. Not just general liability, but they need to have liquor liability. Otherwise, there is no coverage for you if someone gets into an accident. And what's worse too is, aside from being held civilly liable, you can also be held criminally liable for serving minors. But let's talk about just a couple questions that you may want to be asking your vendor as you're thinking about alcohol. First of all, you may have your venue providing it, or you may have your caterer providing your alcohol, but you always want to ask them is gratuity included for the bar staff. You can ask your venue to put on a gratuity automatically, or you can elect the bartenders to put out tip jars. But make sure that's stated ahead of time, because you will see a lot of bartenders putting out tip jars at weddings, and some people do find that kind of tacky. So try to make sure that the bartenders don't put out a tip jar, and that instead you're tipping them appropriately after the event. You also, when you're looking at your quote from your venue, you need to see if that quote includes all the hourly staff. A lot of venues will give you a quote for the alcohol, but they won't necessarily charge you for the staff or quote you for the staff until after the event. So you do need to make sure that those fees are on there, because most of the time if you have a consumption bar or a cash bar or anything along those lines, they're going to be charging you for the staff's rate as well. You also need to look at it if the quote includes glassware. I know at Liquid Catering, glassware is optional and extra, so that's not always automatically on there. So check with your hotel, make sure that glassware is included, or use plastic if you want to as well. Plastic is great because there's a lot less mess. Always make sure too that you have plenty of non-alcoholic drinks for your guests. Especially, I have a lot of weddings where the caterer may be there for the first 2 hours and then they leave, but yet there's still 2 hours of dancing afterwards. Make sure your caterer is leaving those non-alcoholic drinks behind for your guests to drink. So you need to have tea and water and soda, because trust me, towards the end of the night, they're going to need it. So, another question I always get is, how do I keep my wedding from getting too crazy and too out of control when it comes to alcohol? And this is probably, especially your parents, are probably really concerned about this. First of all, don't offer any super strong punches or cocktails or shots. You don't need to be doing Jaeger bombs at your wedding. You don't need to have Everclear trash can punch. Keep it reasonable. Keep every liquor pour to 1.25 ounces, 1.5 ounces, and don't go above that. Your guests can drink as much as they want, essentially, but there's no need to be powering them up with stuff that's too much. Secondly, never ever let your guests bring in outside alcohol. This goes back to that liability thing. When it comes to your insurance policies, if your venue has insurance and then they figure out that your guests are bringing in their own alcohol, guess what? You're no longer covered. The reason being is because if your venue sees guests drinking alcohol that they brought in themselves, then the bartenders have no control over that alcohol whatsoever. So if that person were to get into an accident driving home, who's to say if the alcohol was being served by the bartender or if they were drinking it themselves? So never ever let your guests bring in outside alcohol. Another way, of course, like I said, make sure your guests don't get too rowdy is by making sure you have plenty of non-alcoholic drinks available throughout the evening. Always designate a parent or a close family member to kind of watch the alcohol consumption. They need to be watching for those key family members that they feel like may get out of control. And if you need to, go to the bartenders and say, hey, Aunt Susan's cut off. Nobody's going to be offended, but just go ahead and be watching for those signs early on before things get out of control. Of course, always, always, always hire a professional bartender. And this, guys, I'm going to be honest, this is not a plug for my company at all. I don't care. It wouldn't matter if I was working for a rental company. I would still say this. You have to hire a professional bartender. Having a friend do it or hiring a bartender off Craigslist, yes, I advertise on Craigslist, I'm going to be honest. But first of all, those people aren't going to have insurance, which is a big crucial factor. Secondly, I know you've got your favorite bartender that works at your favorite bar downtown, but they've probably never worked a wedding before. And working wedding bars are totally different than working in a restaurant. Because not only do you have to be watching the guests that are right in front of you immediately at the bar, but your eyes have to be circulating the entire room the entire time to make sure that nobody's sneaking in alcohol, to make sure that nobody's giving your little 20-year-old cousin alcohol, those types of things. So a professional bartending team that's used to working weddings, they're keeping their eyes and ears open the entire event and not just focus at what's at the bar. Plus, they can also handle any emergencies that may arise. I can't tell you how many times we've had stuff happen to where, let's face it, because we work so many weddings, we're used to handling little incidental problems. Another thing you should probably also consider is maybe providing shuttles or a cab or transportation company for your guests to get back to their hotel after the party. It's by no means a fail-proof, and please don't ever think that you shouldn't cut off your guests because you have transportation available. But please have an option for them after the event. So another thing, maybe just to chat about really quick, is how to make your bar experience unique and fun. We do a lot of custom cocktails at Liquid Catering, and I know that's a huge trend right now. One of my favorite trends that I've kind of been starting a little bit lately is doing his and hers cocktails. So you would essentially have two different custom drinks. One would be geared towards the ladies and one would be geared towards the men. It's a lot of fun. We did one recently. We did it themed on blackberries. So we had a blackberry champagne for the ladies, and then we had a blackberry bourbon smash for the men. And it was a huge, huge hit. It was so much fun. Because a lot of times the custom cocktail, it's like if you're stuck on one drink, is it for the guys or is it for the girls? So, but if you do two, but if their flavors are matched, it works really well. When you're looking at custom cocktails, look at things that both you and the groom like. So look at the flavors. Do you both like vodka? Do you both like rum? Maybe you both love Bailey's Irish Cream. So then you take your flavors and you kind of look at the flavors. Do you both like strawberry or kiwi? Or, hey, you know what? We both love rum, we both love strawberries and kiwis and lemonade. So let's make a strawberry kiwi lemonade rum-based drink. We'll serve it in a mason jar, and that is delicious and everybody's gonna love it. So you can definitely think outside the box a little bit on your custom cocktails. You don't have to get locked to traditional recipes. And also too, look at your glassware. What is the presentation of the drink? Do you have a fun garnish? Maybe do some fun custom toothpicks or logoed glassware. You can actually get mason jars printed now with your crest on them, which are awesome. Other ways to customize your bar, of course, you can get koozies that have your logo on them. What's the little cute phrase now? There's a whole little marital phrase for koozies that's really fun. So you can look at all sorts of different things to really enhance that bar element. And of course, lastly, the question that I get asked a lot is, how do I save money on alcohol? Because of course, we all want to have at least a little bit of alcohol at the wedding, but we're worried about budget and we want to have other things too. So a couple of things you can do. First of all, you can keep it to beer and wine. You don't necessarily have to do liquor at your wedding. You can do just beer and wine, and that's totally fine. Limit the hours it's served. Maybe start your alcohol after dinner or end it an hour before the reception is over. And that's totally fine. That is the biggest key when you're looking at your reception costs anyways, is the length of time of your reception and how many guests you have. So first of all, cut your guest count and then cut your reception time. I'd say 4 hours is a good time for receptions. 5 hours is pushing it. 6 hours is way too long. So try to keep it in those windows. Also, you don't necessarily have to have alcohol. Just make sure your guests know that if you don't have alcohol, they don't need to bring a flask in. This goes back to that liability issue because unfortunately, even if you have no alcohol whatsoever at your wedding, if your Uncle Tommy is giving a flask to your 20-year-old cousin Timmy, and Timmy gets into an accident, guess what? You can still be held responsible for that. So make sure your guests know, no outside alcohol. That's a big one. If you are doing an alcohol-free reception, shoot for an afternoon hors d'oeuvres reception instead of a full-seated dinner. Your guests would much rather come in for a quick 2 hours, you know, say hello, say their hellos, give you their congratulations, have a cake cutting, and then be done. You don't necessarily have to have a full 4-hour seated dinner with no alcohol. Of course, you don't have to have a champagne toast. That's a really big thing that most people are cutting out nowadays, so skip it. There's no need to have a champagne toast. And then lastly, like I said, you can always do a cash bar. I know I would probably rather go to a bar or go to a wedding that had a cash bar than not have that option at all. So, but if you do a cash bar, make sure your guests know that it's a cash bar ahead of time, because otherwise they're not going to bring any money with them and then they're upset. So.